In this video, you're going to learn how to solve a three-variable, three-equation linear system using an augmented matrix, and we're going to talk about how to use row operations to solve this system. So we're going to go through three examples, so you'll have a chance to practice some of these on your own if you want to kind of test yourself and see how to do this. And we're going to talk specifically about the order, okay, to go through these different operations. Now, the first thing you want to do is you want to write your augmented matrix. So what we're going to do for solving this system is we're going to use the coefficients in front of the variables to write our matrix. So I'm using 1, 3, 1, and then I just draw a little line here, and then our solution here is 4. Next equation, we've got 3, negative 1, 2, answer 17, and then 2, 2, 3, and 17. Make sure if it's negative, you capture that minus sign, okay? Now that's our augmented matrix. Now what you can do is you can interchange any two rows, okay? You can multiply any row by a non-zero constant, and you can add or subtract any two rows together. So let's work through this and I'll explain as I go. The first thing we want to do is we want to get 0 in this lower left-hand corner. Basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to get zeros in this corner right here. We're trying to get zeros in this upper corner right here, and we're going to get ones on the diagonal, and then we'll know what our solution is for z and for y and for x. Now if you want a little cheat code, so to speak, this is the order that I typically do it in. I do get 0 here in the lower left, then here, then here, then here, then here, then here. Okay, if you don't do it in that way, oftentimes what you'll do is you'll start undoing the work that you did. So let's start with this one here. We want to get 0 right where this 2 is, right? So I'm going to multiply the first row by negative 2. So I'm going to say negative 2 times row 1 plus row 3. And I'm going to put the answer in row 3. Now, you can do the work off to the side and then put the final answer here. A lot of times students like to do that, or you can do it in your head. Okay, so when you do it in your head, sometimes it's a little bit easy to make a simple arithmetic error, but let's be careful here and let's make sure we don't do that. So if I multiply this times negative 2, 1 times negative 2 is negative 2, plus 2 is 0, and that's what we were going for. Negative 2 times 3 is negative 6, plus 2 is negative 4. Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2, plus 3 is 1. Negative 2 times 4 is negative 8, plus 17 is 9. And then the other rows are just going to stay just as they were. Okay, so I'm just going to recopy these down. 1, 3, 1, 4, and then 3, negative 1, 2, 17. Okay, so that's what we did right here. We found this 0 here. Now we're going to make this 0 that position number 2. So how can I make this 3, 0? Well, I'm going to take this first row, and I'm going to multiply it by negative 3, and I'm going to add it to the second row. So let's write that down just so we know what we're doing. So we're going to say negative 3 times row 1 plus row 2, answer is going to go in row 2. You could put the answer in row 1 or row 2. Same thing with this one. You could put the answer in row 1 or row 3. It's just that it's going to be easier because we're trying to get 0 in this position here. Okay, so now let's go ahead and do that arithmetic. So if I do that, let's see, we've got 1 times negative 3 is negative 3, plus 3 is 0. 3 times negative 3 is negative 9, plus negative 1 is negative 10. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3, plus 2 is negative 1. Negative 3 times 4 is negative 12, plus 17 is 5. The other rows are going to just stay exactly the same. So 1, 3, 1, 4, and 0, negative 4, 1, and 9. Okay, so far so good. Now, our next 0 is this one right here, number 3. We want to get 0 right where this 4 is. So how can we do that? Well, you don't want to combine it with row 1. Why don't you want to combine it with row 1? Because then when we add these together, see how we're going to be getting rid of this 0 here? Because you're going to be combining 1 or something, you know, with this one 0, and it's going to basically not be 0 anymore. So you're really going to want to combine the second and the third rows together. And it looks like they both go into 20 as a lowest common multiple. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply negative 2 times row 2. That gives me positive 20, plus 5 times row 3. That would give me negative 20. When I add those together, I'll get 0, and we're going to put the answer in row 3. Okay, we're running out of space. We're going to put the answer up here. So let's see what we got here. So we've got negative 2 times 0 is 0. plus 5 times 0 is 0. That's going to give us 0, right? Negative 10 times negative 2 we said is 20, and negative 4 times 5 is negative 20. So when we add those together, we're going to get 0. So far we've got 0, 0. Negative 2 times negative 1 is 2, plus 5 is 7. And negative 2 times 5 is negative 10, plus 9 times 5 is 45, so that adds up to 35. Okay, so you can see this is starting to shape up. Now these other rows are going to stay the same, so we've got 1, 3, 1. The biggest issue that students have is, just making little calculation errors. That's one problem. The other problem is that, they don't know how to follow this order here so that they don't undo the work that they already did, if that makes sense. So now notice what we've got. We've got 0 in this lower left-hand corner. That's right here. That's perfect. Let's go ahead and, we want to get 1s on the diagonal, so let's go ahead and multiply this third row by 1/7. So I'm going to say 1/7 times row 3, answer in row 3, and that's going to go right here, and that's going to give us 0, 0, 1, and 5. Okay, multiplying by 1/7 is like dividing by 7. And you can see now that z is equal to 5. Okay, so then let's just go ahead. Now you can do more than one step. Some students are really efficient about this, and you can maybe do a couple steps per augmented matrix, but just to keep it simple so we don't make any mistakes, let's just do one per each time. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get a 0 here for number 4. So how can I make this 0 right here? Well, all I have to do is add row 3 and row 2 together, because when I do that, I'm going to get 1 plus negative 1 is going to give me a 0 here. 0 plus 0 is going to be 0, so I'm not going to be undoing this 0, right? So let's go ahead and write that down. Let's say row 2 plus row 3, answer is going to go in row 2. So let me put that right here. Just want to make sure I have enough room to fit this whole problem on the board here for you. So this is going to give us 0, negative 10, 0, and 10, because I'm just adding 5 plus 5, 1 plus negative 1, 0 plus negative 10, 0 plus 0. The other rows are going to stay the same. Okay, and now you can see if I was to multiply this row by negative 1/10, so negative 1/10 times row 2, answer in row 2, that's negative 1/10 is like dividing by negative 10. That's going to make this 0, 1, 0, and negative 1, and this is 0, 0, 1, 5, and 1, 3, 1, 4. And so now you can see y is equal to negative 1, z is equal to 5. We just have to figure out what x is, right? So still following this pattern, we found 0 in position 4 here. Let's make this one 0, number 5, which is going to be right here. Now, I'm going to just take the third row, multiply it by negative 1, add it to the first row. This way you can see negative 1 plus 1 is going to give me 0, okay? And we've gotten 0 in that position number 5. So let's write that down. We're going to say, let's see, row 1 plus negative 1 times row 3, answer in row 1. Okay, now if we do that, let's go ahead and put the answer over here. So that's going to give us, let's see, so we said row 1 plus negative 1 times 0 is 0. So when I add those together, I'm just going to get 1. 3 times negative 1 times 0 is still going to give us 3 here. And 1 plus negative 1 times 1 is negative 1, so 1 plus negative 1 is 0. And 4 plus negative 1 times 5 is negative 5, so 4 plus negative 5 is negative 1. Okay, and then the other rows are just going to stay the same. So 0, 1, 0, negative 1, and 0, 0, 1, 5. Okay, now we're just going to do this last one here, number 6. We have to get this one 0. And which row would you combine? Would you combine row 1 and row 2 or row 1 and row 3? Well, we're going to do row 1 and row 3, because if we did, let's see, if we did, oh, did I say row 1 and row 3? We're going to do row 1 and row 2, because the thing is, if we do row 1 and row 3, then we're going to be making that 0 something other than 0, which is going to undo the work we did in the last step. So we're going to combine row 1 and row 2, and we're going to multiply this row here by negative 3. So when we add it to row 1, the negative 3 and the positive 3 will give us 0. So let's write that down. So let's just, I'll write it right here. I'll say row 1 plus negative 3 times row 2, answer in row 1. And I'll just put that right here. That's going to come out to, let's see, 1 plus 0 times negative 3 is 0, so that's going to be 1. 3 plus 1 times negative 3, that's going to come out to 0. And 0 plus negative 3 times 0 is 0, so that's going to add up to 0. And negative 1, and this is negative 1 times negative 3 is positive 3, so that comes out to 2. And then the other rows are staying the same, so 0, 1, 0, negative 1, and 0, 0, 1, 5. So now look what we have. If we were to rewrite our equations now, remember these are the coefficients, we have 1x plus 0y plus 0z is equal to 2. So that tells us that x equals 2. This would be like 0x plus 1y plus 0z equals negative 1. So we know y is negative 1. Same thing here, z is equal to 5. So again, you want ones on the diagonal like this, zeros everywhere else. These are going to be your solutions, and you can write it as a triple in alphabetical order, x, y, z. Now, if you want to check your work, you can take these numbers, put it back in, make sure it comes out to 4, put it back in, make sure it comes out to 17, and also 17 for the third equation, and you got it. So let's take a look at another example. See if you can try this one on your own, and we'll go through it together. Okay, did you try number 2 on your own? So let's go through it together. I'm really excited for you guys because if you haven't understood this up to this point, I think by following this pattern here that we're showing you, it should make it a lot easier, and I think you're going to feel real successful with this. So let's go ahead and write down our augmented matrix first. Okay, and remember, you're just writing down the coefficients, the numbers in front of the variables, making sure to capture if it's a positive or a negative, and your solutions go over here on the right side of this line. Remember, we want to start off by getting 0 in this lower left-hand corner, so how would you do that? Well, in this case, I think it's probably going to be easiest to combine row 2 and row 3, and we're going to multiply this by negative 2. When we add it to the positive 2, that's going to give us 0. So let's write that step down. We're going to say negative 2 times row 2 plus row 3, answer is going to go in row 3. So if we write our matrix here now, this is going to be negative 2 plus 2 is 0. Negative 2 times negative 1 is 2, plus 3 is 5. 2 times negative 2 is negative 4, plus negative 5 is negative 9. And 2 times negative 2 is negative 4, plus 1 is negative 3. Okay, now the other rows are going to remain the same, so let's just go ahead and copy those down. Now, sometimes when people are learning this, they'll learn about like Gaussian elimination or Gauss-Jordan elimination or row-reduced echelon form. There's different names for how far you want to take this, and I'll try to give you some pointers as we go along if you want to stop prior to the full row-reduced echelon form like I did in the last example. You don't have to go all the way to solve it. You can basically, at some point, you can kind of jump ship and then write down the equations that you have so far and do some back substitution. So I'll show you that in this one when we get to that point. So we've got 0 in the lower left-hand corner. We want to get 0 in that second position. So we have to combine row 1 and row 2. We want this to be 0, so let's do negative 3 times row 2 plus row 1. Now, you know, this is another little hint here. Sometimes when I do this, I like to put, like I would put row 1 first, okay? So I would just say row 1 plus negative 3 times row 2, answer in row 2. And the reason I do that is because I put the row that's higher first and the row that's lower second, then I just try to stay consistent so I don't make a mistake. So that would be 3 plus negative 3 is going to give us 0, and 2, negative 3 times negative 1 is 3, so when we add those together we get 5, and here we get 1. 2 times negative 3 is negative 6, so that comes out to negative 5, and here we get 11 plus negative 6, which is 5. Okay, so now let's just copy down those rows, 3, 2, 1, 11, those stay the same, and 0, 5, negative 9, and negative 3. Okay, so we've got the zeros here. Now we want to get 0 in this third position right here, which is where this 5 is. So would you combine row 1 and row 3 or row 2 and row 3? Well, we don't want to do row 1 and row 3 because then see how we would undo that 0 there? Because you'd be adding like a non-zero with a 0. So let's do row 2 and row 3. Let's do negative 1 times row 2 plus row 3, answer in row 3. Okay, so if we do that, let's see what that's going to give us. Let's go up here. We were going to get 0 and 0 is going to give us 0. Negative 1 times 5 is negative 5. Plus 5 is going to give us 0, which is what we wanted. Negative 1 times negative 5 is positive 5. Plus negative 9 is negative 4. And negative 1 times 5 is negative 5. Plus negative 3 is negative 8. Okay, and then the other rows are going to stay the same. So 3, 2, 1, 11. And 0, 5, negative 5, and 5. Okay, and then now you can see that all we have to do is multiply by negative 1/4 to row 3, put the answer in row 3, and that'll allow us to solve for z, right? So that's going to give us 0, 0, 1, and 2, so we know that z is equal to 2. Now, again, if you wanted to stop right here, okay, you could say, well, I know z is equal to 2. This equation is 5y minus 5z equals 5. So if you know z equals 2, you could put it in for z and solve for y. Then once you have y and z, you could write this equation out. Okay, 3x plus 2y plus z equals 11, and you can substitute and solve for x. So that's called back substitution. So once you get zeros in this lower left-hand corner, it's kind of easy to solve from there. You could, if you wanted to take it further, you can multiply this row by negative 1/4, this row by 1/5 to get a 1 here, and this row by 1/3. The only bad side about that is you're going to have some fractions to contend with. So let's keep going though. We're going to go for the row reduced echelon form, just like we're doing over here. So let's go ahead and copy down these other rows. They stayed the same. Okay, so now our goal is to get 0 right here, position number 4. So what rows would you combine to get 0 in here? Well, it'd have to be the third and the second, because if I did the first and the second, we would be undoing this 0 that we just, this one here. So let's go ahead and combine row 2 and row 3. We're going to say 5. I did that again. Let's do row 2 plus 5 times row 3, answer in row 2. Okay, so let's do that. So if we do that, we're going to get 0 plus 0 is equal to, put it over here, 0, and then we've got 5 plus 0 is going to be 5, and then we have negative 5 plus 5 is going to be 0, and then we have 5 plus 10, because 5 times 2 is 10 plus 15. Okay, so that's interesting. So the other rows are going to stay the same, right? And then now what would you do from here? Well, I probably just multiply the second row by 1/5. So I'd say 1/5 times row 2, answer in row 2, and that's going to give us 0, 1, 0, 3, 0, 0, 1, 2. That row stays the same, and the top row stayed the same as well. So now look what we've got. Z equals 2, y equals 3. Again, we could abandon ship right here and write down this top equation and substitute and solve for x. But let's keep going. Let's go and get 0 in position 5 now. And so would you combine row 3 with row 1 or row 2 with row 1? Let's do row 3 with row 1. And what we'll do is we'll say, let's do row 1 plus negative 1 times row 3, answer in row 1. This way we're going to get 1 plus negative 1 would give us a 0 there. Okay, so if we do that, let's do that. So we got 3 plus negative 1 times 0 is 0. So 3 plus 0 is going to give us 3. Let's see if we can put it right here. 2 plus negative 1 times 0 is 0. So that's just going to give you 2. And 1 plus negative 1 times 1 is negative 1. 1 plus negative 1 is 0. And 11, 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. So that adds up to 9. Okay, and the other rows stay the same. So let's see, 0, 1, 0. 0, 0, 1, 3, and 2. Okay, and now we're on that last sixth position here. We're going to get a 0 where that 2 is. We're going to want to combine which ones? 1 and 3 or 1 and 2? Well, we don't want to do 1 and 3 because see how that 1 would then, we would get rid of the 0 we just got there. So let's do row 1 and row 2. And let's do row 1 plus negative 2 times row 2. And we'll put the answer in row 1. This way, this will give us negative 2 plus 2 is 0. So let's put that answer right here. That's going to give us 3, 0, 0. And let's see, we've got 9 plus negative 6, which is going to give us 3. All the other rows stay the same. And you can see this top row, all we have to do is multiply by 1/3. So 1/3 times row 1, answer in row 1 is going to give us, let's see here, 1, 0, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 3, 0, 0, 1, 2. And so you can see x equals 1, y equals 3, z equals 2. We can write it as a triple, 1, 3, 2. And if you want to check your work, just go back to the original equations, make sure it comes out to 11, 2, and 1, and you got it. So let's do one more example. See if you can test yourself, see if you can get this last one, and let's dive into that third example. Okay, before we walk through this last example together, if you like the way that I explain things and you want to go deeper with some of your math studies with me, I've got an Algebra 1 and an Algebra 2 / College Algebra video course for sale in the description below, so you can check that out if you're interested. And if you just want to support the content that I'm putting up here on my Mario's Math Tutoring YouTube channel, consider joining as a channel member. For a few dollars a month, you can help support the videos I'm putting up here, and I really appreciate that. And lastly, if you just want to find another way to support me, you can purchase one of my math t-shirts on my Teespring store. So you can see some t-shirts below the video. So take a look at those, but let's dive into this last example. The first thing we want to do is what? We want to write our augmented matrix using the coefficients, solutions on the right, and just be careful you capture any positive or negative signs. And notice that I put a little line through my z so I don't confuse my z's with number 2. Okay, now remember we want to follow this little cheat code here. We start with getting 0 in that lower left-hand corner, position number 1. So we can combine any of these rows together. Let's do the first row and the third row. So I'm just going to say -1 times row 1 plus row 3, answer in row 3. Now there's more than one way to do these problems. So if when you're looking at the way you did it, you say, Mario, I didn't do it the exact same way. If you end up with the same result, no problem. So there's a different way to do this. So we've got -1 times 1 is -1 plus 1 is 0. -1 times 1 is -1 plus 3 is 2. -1 times 1 is -1 plus 2 is 1. -1 times 0 is 0 plus 5 is 5. And we just keep the other rows exactly the same. So that works out nice. Okay, let's go for position number 2, which is right here. So let's combine the first and the second row. Let's do -3 times row 1 plus row 2, answer in row 2. So if we do that, let's see, we're going to get -3 times 1 is -3 plus the 3 is 0. -3 times 1 is -3 plus the 2 is -1. -3 times 1 is -3 plus -1 is -4. -3 times 0 is 0 plus -6 is -6. And then the other rows stay the same. So we just copy those down. Now we want to get a 0 in this position, position number 3 here. Okay, so to do that, let's combine the second and third row. We don't want to do the first and third because we'll be undoing this 0 in the lower left. So let's do 2 times row 2 plus row 3, answer in row 3. So if we do that, let's put the answer up here. We're going to get 0 plus 0 is 0. -2 plus 2 is 0. -8 plus 1 is -7. And -12 plus 5 is -7. Okay, and the other rows stay the same, so we have 1, 1, 1, 0, and 0, -1, -4, -6. Okay, so now what I would do is I just multiply this third row by -1/7, and then put that in row 3, so that's going to be 0, 0, 1, 1. Okay, so you can see that z is equal to 1. The other rows stay the same. Now, if you wanted to jump ship at this point, you say, well, I know z is equal to 1. I could write this equation down, put z in for here, 1 in for z, I mean, and solve for y. Then you'd have y and z, put it in the top equation, and you got it, right? But let's keep going. So here we're going to get 0 in this next position here where this -4 is. So let's say row 2 plus -4 times row 3, answer in row 2. So if we do that, I'll put it right here, we get, let's see, this is going to be 0, -1, 0, Oh, this is actually we're multiplying by positive 4 because this will be 4 and negative 4 give us 0. So let's do that. So we've got 0, negative 1, 0, and then negative 6 plus 4 is negative 2. Okay, there we go. See how easy it is to make a simple mistake? So you want to always kind of check yourself, and that's why I write these down. So if I ever have to go back and say, well, what did I do at that step? I can check my work. Okay, and the other rows are staying the same. And then here you can see, let's just multiply by negative 1. So negative 1 times row 2, answer in row 2, and that's going to give us 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 0, 1, 1, and 1, 1, 1, 0. So now we can see y equals 2, z equals 1. Again, we could jump ship here and solve for x by back substituting, but let's keep going. Let's get a 0 up here in position number 5, and let's combine these two rows together. So we'll say row 1 plus negative 1 times row 3, answer in row 1. So that's going to come out to, let's put the answer right up here, if we can fit it. We've got 1, 1, 0, and negative 1. So I multiplied, this row stayed the same, this row we multiplied by negative 1, and we added them together. So that's 1, 1, 0, and negative 1. Okay, good. And so then the other rows stay the same. So 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 2, and 1. Okay, now we're going to 0 in this last position right here. So let's combine the second and the first. You don't want to do the third and the first because then you'd be undoing this 0. So let's just go ahead and say we'll do row 1 plus negative 1 times row 2, answer in row 1. Put the answer right here. So we're going to get 1, 0, 0, and negative 3, right? Because row 1 stays the same. We're multiplying this one by negative 1, and we're adding it. So that's giving you negative 3. So this is 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 0, 1, 1. And you can see we've got 1s on the diagonal, 0s everywhere else on the left side of this augmented matrix. So we can see that x is equal to negative 3, y is equal to 2, z is equal to 1. If you want to check your work, you put it back in and make sure that it comes out to 0, negative 6, and 5, and you got it. If you want to see another video that I did talking about how to do these elementary row operations, follow me over to that video right there. We'll get some more practice. I'll see you over in that video.